Hey, how's it going everyone? This is Lam here. In today's video, I want to talk about the film simulations that you can use on your Fujifilm cameras. This applies both to the X-T3 and the X-T30, and in fact, it actually applies to all of the Fujifilm cameras. But specifically, we're talking about film simulations, which is basically picture profiles, or at least that's what the other camera manufacturing brands would call their color science. So why this is important is because a lot of people choose Fujifilm cameras because of their color science. But if you actually don't know how to use their film simulations to your advantage, you're really not taking full advantage of the camera systems. So in this specific tutorial, I'm going to talk about how you can use the bracket modes in both of these cameras to take advantage of learning how different film simulations work and really take advantage of your camera system. So the best way to learn the film simulation, in my opinion, is to actually use the bracket mode on your cameras. Over on the X-T30, it's actually much easier to see. In fact, on the X-T30, you actually get the choice of 2 bracket settings. So that's actually super useful. But for the time being, we're just going to be using one of the bracket settings. So all you have to do is toggle to your bracket mode, which is going to be the BKT setting right here. Once you do that, go ahead and go into your menu settings. You want to go to your camera icon, and then you want to go into drive settings. From the drive settings, what you can do is you can actually set up what type of bracket shooting that you want to do. Again, it's the BKT settings. You want to go ahead and go into that. So once you're inside of the bracket setting menu, you can select the bracket that you want to do. For this particular one, we're going to be doing the film simulations. We're not going to be touching the rest of these. That's going to be for a later tutorial. From there, we can select film simulations, and in here what we can do is we can select 3 different film simulations. So for every one picture we take, we are actually going to get 3 different film simulations of that photograph, which is going to be great. My recommendations for starters is for film simulation 1 is to go ahead and choose Velvia. So that's going to give you your most saturated look, very punchy. And then for the second one, for film 2, what we're going to do is we're going to choose Eterna. That's going to give you your flattest look. So that's the opposite of Velvia. So that's going to give you the polar opposite when you actually look at that. And then for film simulation number 3, we're going to go ahead and choose Across, which is going to be black and white, which is great because now you can see 3 different picture profiles or film simulations for every one picture you take. Now, if you have the X-T30, the only thing that's going to be different is that when you're in your drive settings, you actually have 2 bracket modes that you can play with. For this particular example, I'm going to go ahead and set it to bracket mode 2. I can go ahead and select film simulation as the bracket mode that I want to use. And once again, I chose Velvia, Eterna, and Across for my X-T30. So rather than boring you by talking about film simulations, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to show you a series of examples. So right here is a picture that I took just during sunset, and this is Velvia right here. As you can see, the sky is well exposed and the colors are really beautiful, but we really don't see anything underneath the sky. But if we scroll over to the Eterna profile, what you can see is that the dynamic range is significantly higher. We're seeing a lot more detail underneath the sky, and right away you can tell the difference between Velvia, which is going to be super dark, but it's got very nice saturation for the sky, against Eterna, which is going to be a little bit more flatter, but you're going to get significantly more dynamic range, which is really cool. And of course, we have Across, which is black and white, and that's kind of right in the middle. It's not overly dark, but it's not super flat like Eterna, so it gives you a nice blend of in between. As you can see, you can see a little bit of detail underneath, but very quickly with just this one example, you can see the benefits of using different film simulations. Let's go ahead and go to the next example. So this particular one, I just took a photo of my phone case, and again, this is in Velvia. As you can tell, the colors are really nice. So this was taken with the 35mm f1.4. As you can see, it's a really nice picture, probably not interesting to anybody, but overall it's a very nice colors and it's definitely usable just from the JPEG view right here. Now, if we move over to Eterna, what you see is a much flatter image once again, but once again, we're seeing a lot more details at the bottom of the phone line here. The way that I look at with the Eterna profile is that it's kind of a raw light. It's not going to give you the full advantages of shooting in RAW, but if you want to just do a little bit of light editing, say on your phone, I think Eterna is a great place to start, because all you have to do is tweak a little bit of the image. You're probably going to get an image that you really like, and then you can go ahead and post that image. So for me, Velvia is something that I can just use right out of the box. And then Eterna, I always go to this one if I just want to tweak the picture a little bit, because it gives me such high dynamic range and the colors are all there. So I can just go ahead and add the JPEG into any color editor, tweak it a little bit, and then post it online. And of course, the last one is Across. Occasionally, you'll just run across a super great black and white. From my experience standpoint, I don't really know if a picture is going to really pop in black and white until I actually see it, but occasionally you'll just get those special images that are going to be really great in black and white. That's why I always shoot Across as one of my film simulations. Also, just as a side note, your lens has a lot to do with whether or not your black and white images will really pop. So moving on to the next example, this one is taken at an event, and I really love this picture. This is definitely one where I can just take it straight from the camera and then just post it online, like on an Instagram, because it's very punchy, it's very colorful, the skin tones look fine, it's just a nice image overall. Now moving over to the Eterna profile, as you can see, the overall picture is much flatter, but the colors are still there. So with a little bit of tweaking, this can actually be an amazing image. Also, another thing to consider is that if you leave the images much flatter, it's going to print a lot better, because when you print an image and you actually hang it up on the wall, you want it to actually fit the scenery that it's around. And generally speaking, you don't really want super punchy images, because they're not going to fit well with the scene when you actually place it on the wall. So this particular photo with a few touch-ups, I think would be a great one to print out and actually display on a wall, because you definitely want a much flatter images in those type of scenarios. And then once again, we go into the black and white, and I really love this black and white because, you know, the contrast is definitely there. There's a texture to the black and white. It's a really nice look. And this is kind of what I was saying with black and white images. Occasionally, you'll just find one that looks really great in black and white. This particular one, I would say, looks pretty good in black and white. And if you actually post it up as a black and white image, I think most people would really like it. So the next image that I wanted to show you is this one right here, mostly because the background highlights are really blown out. And what I want to show you is this is what it looks like in Velvia. It's still a very usable picture, but again, the background is quite bright. I would probably do a little bit of adjustment on this one to darken the background a little bit so it's not as distracting. But if we move over to the Eterna profile, as you can see, it looks pretty good. And with the Eterna profile, we get some of that color information back, which is super important, so that when we darken the overall image, you're definitely going to get a lot more detail in the background. This is one of those images where I shot overly bright, and I would definitely go with the Eterna image because I can bring back some of the highlights, and then I can just touch up the colors a little bit to make this image to be something kind of cool, a behind the scenes picture of what's going on at the event. When we move over to the Across side, I don't think there's actually a lot of adjustments I would need to make to this one. I might darken the background just a tad bit, but overall I can leave this untouched and still be very happy with the image. So the last example that I want to show you is about overall dynamic range. So this particular one, I'm shooting a white piece of paper on a keyboard. Again, here we have a very wide dynamic range. We have white on black. So when we actually use Velvia, you don't really see too much of the keyboard because it's so black, while trying to preserve the white, which is the focus of this image. But if we move over to the Eterna profile, you can see how much of that black comes back. It's actually a really nice image. I probably wouldn't change anything about this image if I were to use this one. This is an image that's super cool to me, probably not really interesting to anybody else, but I really like how this looks. I would use this to post on Twitter saying, you know, I really like the movie Endgame, blah, 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 blah. And of course, we have the Across one, which I find this to be pretty amazing because you can still see the details of the keyboard. They're really well etched out. And a lot of this is due to the fact that the 35mm f1.4 is a really great lens for black and white shooting. It just holds a lot of color information in the blacks, and it really shows different types of textures really well. One of my favorite black and white lenses to shoot at. But those are the quick examples that I want to show you. Hopefully this helps you out. So in this tutorial, I showed you 3 of my favorite film simulations that I like to shoot in, especially for my day-to-day photography, but definitely experiment with different film simulations, because as you use more of the different film simulations, you'll definitely get a feel for which ones you like and which ones you don't like. Don't take my word for it, definitely experiment with it, but I do recommend going with Velvia, Eterna, and then Acros first, just because it covers such a wide range of the dynamic range that these cameras can give you. Then you can really start fine-tuning and tweaking it and really creating your own style, and that's what photography is all about. Hopefully I didn't ramble on too long. Please leave your questions in the comments below. I'll definitely go through all of them and answer them as best I can, but I hope this video helped you out, and I will see you in the next video.